backdrop to his thought. Although a highly original thinker, Freud was also deeply influenced by a number of diverse factors which overlapped and interconnected with each other to shape the development of his thought. As indicated above, both Charcot and Breuer had a direct and immediate impact upon him. But some of the other factors, though no less important than these, were of a rather different nature. First of all, Freud himself was very much a Freudian. His father had two sons by a previous marriage, Emmanuel and Philip, and the young Freud often played with Philip's son John, who was his own age. Freud's self-analysis, which forms the core of his masterpiece The Interpretation of Dreams, originated in the emotional crisis which he suffered on the death of his father and series of dreams to which this gave rise. This analysis revealed to him that the love and admiration which he had felt for his father were mixed with very contrasting feelings of shame and hate. Such a mixed attitude he termed ambivalence. Particularly revealing was his discovery that he had often fantasized as a youth that his half-brother Philip, who was of an age with his mother, was really his father. And certain other signs convinced him of the deep underlying meaning of this fantasy, that he had wished his real father dead because he was his rival for his mother's affections. This was to become the personal, though by no means exclusive, basis for his theory of the Oedipus complex. Secondly, and at a more general level, account must be taken of the contemporary scientific climate in which Freud lived and worked. In most respects, the towering scientific figure of 19th-century science was Charles Darwin, who had published his revolutionary Origin of Species when Freud was 4 years old. The evolutionary doctrine radically altered the prevailing conception of man, whereas before, man had been seen as a being different in nature from the members of the animal kingdom by virtue of his possession of an immortal soul. He was now seen as being part of the natural order, different from non-human animals only in degree of structural complexity. This made it possible and plausible, for the first time, to treat man as an object of scientific investigation, and to conceive of the vast and varied range of human behavior, and the motivational causes from which it springs, as being amenable in principle to scientific explanation. Much of the creative work done in a whole variety of diverse scientific fields over the next century was to be inspired by, and derive sustenance from, this new worldview, which Freud, with his enormous esteem for science, accepted implicitly. An even more important influence on Freud, however, came from the field of physics. The second 50 years of the 19th century saw monumental advances in contemporary physics, which were largely initiated by the formulation of the principle of the conservation of energy by Helmholtz. This principle states, in effect, that the total amount of energy in any given physical system is always constant, that energy quanta can be changed but not annihilated, and that consequently when energy is moved from one part of the system, it must reappear in another part. The progressive application of this principle led to monumental discoveries in the fields of thermodynamics, electromagnetism and nuclear physics which, with their associated technologies, have so comprehensively transformed the contemporary world. As we have seen, when he first came to the University of Vienna, Freud worked under the direction of Ernst Brücke, who in 1873-4 published his lecture notes on physiology, Vorlesungen über Physiologie. Vienna, Wilhelm Braumüller, setting out the view that all living organisms, including humans, are essentially energy systems to which, no less than to inanimate objects, the principle of the conservation of energy applies. Freud, who had great admiration and respect for Brücke, quickly adopted this new dynamic physiology with enthusiasm. From there it was but a short conceptual step, but one which Freud was the first to take, and on which his claim to fame is largely grounded, to the view that there is such a thing as psychic energy, that the human personality is also an energy system, and that it is the function of psychology to investigate the modifications, transmissions and conversions of psychic energy within the personality which shape and determine it. This latter conception is the very cornerstone of Freud's psychoanalytic theory.